Hola again. How you guys doing? I am going to do the Gospel of Q. Now, it is not Q as we know it today. Okay, this is the source document. This is the document where all the other Gospels came from. It predates it. I don't know the time frame of it, but I do know that it comes well before that. Gospel of Q has nothing to do with his Q as we know it today. It comes from the German word Quell, which means source. Its existence was first theorized by a German scholar named Christian Weiss in 1838. Q describes a shared literary source used by Matthew and Luke. This is the first written gospel known to have existed. It's not very long at all, but you can see the astrotheological mentions in it all the same. Let's jump right in. Let's do the 12 signs again, guys. Aquarius. I'm not going to mention that it's an air sign. Well, I mean, I just did, but I'm not going to mention that it's an air sign. And I'm not going to mention that it involves water. I'm not going to do that anymore. And I'm not going to mention the fact that Aries starts the year, but I start with Aquarius. So the Aquarius is the sign which is represented by the man. Whenever you hear son of man, man, baptism, water pitcher, fountain, stream, river, pond, lake, creek, they're talking about Aquarius. Pisces is a sign of the two fish in the water. So all the same water examples in Aquarius go in Pisces too. Aries is the ram. And in Aries, you have March 21st, which is the spring equinox. It's a 12-hour day, 12-hour night. It's also the Passover, or the passing over of the sun over the equator and back on its way up to its height in the summer solstice. In Christianity, the passing over is changed and called the resurrection of God's son. In Judaism, the Passover is when the angel of death passes over all the people that don't have the lamb or the ram's blood, Aries, on their doorpost. The reason it's Aries is because the Jews are the people of Aries. So whenever you hear ram, lamb, shepherd, ram's horn, you're talking about Aries. Taurus is the bull. When you look in the sky and you see Taurus during the season where it's supposed to be, you know that you need to put the plow on the bull so that you can plant the seeds so you can harvest in Virgo and Libra. So whenever you hear bull, ox, calf, or cow being a female bull, they're talking about Taurus. Gemini is the twins. It's the story of Castor and Pollux Troy, whose sister was Helen of Troy. It's the story of Achilles. So whenever you hear twins or brothers, they're talking about Gemini. Cancer is the crab, and it's the sideways moving creature. Just as the sun rises a degree on its axis, starting December 25th, it stops on June 21st. Then for 3 days, it rises to the same degree, moving sideways. Then on June 25th, it lowers a degree. The crab in the ancient Egyptian time was known as the scarab. So whenever you hear crab or beetle, they're talking about Cancer. Leo is the king. The lion is the king of the jungle. The ruling planet of Leo is actually the sun. So whenever you hear lion, lioness, or cub, they're talking about Leo. Virgo is the woman holding the wheat stalk. So remember before when you said that you planted Taurus? Well, the virgins would cultivate the wheat in Virgo in order to make the bread for the year. So whenever you hear virgin, wheat, grain, seed, barley, corn, grainy things that you harvest, that's Virgo. Chaff, even chafe. Libra is the justice. It's the scales, it's the balance, it's the just one. The reason it's the justice is because it judges God's sun as it passes over the fall equinox and begins its descent into winter, into cold, into death. Okay? Libra is also wine season. So when you plant the seeds in Taurus, this is when you press the grapes for the wine. It's also olive oil season. So whenever you hear law, judge, justice, the just one, divorce, marriage, court, lawlessness, oh, how I love your law, for example, they're talking about Libra. Whenever you hear wine, vineyard, wine press, olive oil, they're talking about Libra too. And Scorpio is the scorpion. He is the betrayer. When a scorpion bites you, it leaves an imprint in your skin that looks like a pair of lips. It's why the mafia has the kiss of death. It's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas with a kiss. So the sun is judged in Libra and it's betrayed in Scorpio. And then finally Sagittarius, this is where the bow and the arrow shoot the sun and inflict further punishment on the sun. This is where the sun dies. Why? Because on December 21st, the sun is at its lowest point. It cannot rise any lower. It's dead. It's the dead of winter. It remains at its lowest level for 3 days, which is why Jesus was dead for 3 days. When on December 25th of the birth of God's son, it rises another degree and starts to make its way back up top. So it keeps doing the cycle. Goes up a degree every single day, June 21st, height, stop, 1, 2, 3, down a degree, 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 down a degree. December 21st, stop. 1, 2, 3, up a degree, and it continues with this pattern every single year. Whenever you're a horse, bow and arrow, spear, horseman, you're talking about Sagittarius. Capricorn is the goat because he likes to climb the mountain. So if you look at the zodiac wheel on the right, Capricorn's at the bottom. And I explained to you that it starts climbing up the mountain. It starts doing that in Capricorn, where it starts climbing the mountain, just like the mountain goats. So this is not very long at all, but let's see what we have in the Q. Now, a lot of the Q document was missing. It's not a complete parchment. So I tried to just give you the stuff that is complete, because you can't really decode something if you don't have the whole sentence. I mean, you can, but then it's more into interpretation. And I know that what I do is up to interpretation too, but I like to make a strong case for it. John the Baptizer, you offsprings of vipers, who armed you to flee from the fury to come. So bear fruit worthy of change. The snake is Ophiuchus, the viper, the serpent and the serpent handler, and the fruit comes from Libra, the grapes. Those are connecting signs. Again, with the connecting signs and the opposing signs. I baptize you in water. His pitchfork is in his hand to clean out his threshing floor and to gather the wheat into his barn, but he'll burn up the chaff with fire that can't be put out. The baptism is Aquarius, the man with the water pitcher pouring the water out, and the wheat and the chaff of the wheat is Virgo. When you connect them at their firmaments to their following signs, they are opposing signs. So that's how you bend the zodiac in order to get more into it, more storyline. If you're God's son initiated, if you're God's son, the devil told him, tell these stones to be turned into bread. It's written, don't live on bread alone. The bread is Virgo, the lady with the wheat stalk. Jesus' wisdom path. Treat people how you want them to treat you. Don't judge and you won't be judged, because you'll be judged the way that you judge. All right, for judge. Are figs gathered from thorns or grape from thistles? This is where the golden rule initiates from. The judge is Libra, the scales of justice. Figs are gathered in Libra in September, as are the grapes. John and Jesus. Go tell John what you've heard and see. He replied, those who are blind regain their sight, are dead and raised up. The sun does this. When the sun goes down, it's dark and we lose our sight. But when the sun touches our eyes in the morning, suddenly we can see. That's how Jesus heals the blind. Jesus, the Son of God, the only begotten Son, the light of the world. Talking about Lazarus, all the dead raised up, whom Jesus raised from the dead is not a new concept. El-Azar-us is Egyptian and references Osiris, who Horus raised from the dead. El is a Semitic word for God, and Osir is Egyptian for Osiris, El-Osar. In Greek, the name is Lazaros, meaning whom God helps, which is exactly what Lazarus meant as well. Okay? Lazarus is not a new concept. Following Jesus, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Look, I send you out like lambs among wolves, or sheep among the wolves, right? That's a famous biblical passage. The harvest takes place in Virgo, when all the grains are harvested. The lamb are Aries, and the wolf is the constellation Lupus, which means wolf, and it borders Libra. Okay? That means they're opposing signs, Libra and Aries. So this is even more of a way to bend the zodiac in order to tell more of a story. God is provider. Give us our daily bread today. Which of you would give your child a stone if they asked for bread? Or would you give them a snake if they asked for fish? The bread is Virgo, the snake is Ophiuchus, and the fish is Pisces. Pisces and Virgo are opposing signs. Priorities. Think about how the ravens don't sow, reap, or gather in the barns, into barns, yet God feeds them. Aren't you more valuable than the birds? The constellation Corvus, which means raven, which is in Virgo. You sow in Taurus and you reap in Virgo. That's the story they're telling you. That's the encoded metaphor. They're very deep metaphors, but if you know the key words, you can pick this apart. He told them, when it's evening, you say there'll be good weather because the sky is red in the morning. There'll be wintry weather today because the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky. Why don't you know how to interpret the time? That's a really good question. When you're going with your adversary, do your best to settle the case on the way there, or else your adversary may hand you over to the judge and the judge to the officer. The time is the age that we're living in the zodiac signs. The judge is a Libra, the judge. So when he says you know how to interpret the sky, but you don't know how to interpret the time, it's no different than the book of Job where he says, can you tell forth the Mazzaroth? The Mazzaroth literally meaning the zodiac. Entering God's reign. What is God's reign like? And to what should I compare it? It can be compared to a mustard seed, which someone sowed in their garden. And again, to what shall I compare God's reign? It can be compared to yeast, which a woman hid in 50 pounds of flour until it was all fermented. Well, the mustard seed, because remember I mentioned seed before? Seed, grains, things that you harvest. Sowing happens in Taurus. The yeast in the flour is Virgo as well. Everyone who divorces his wife and remarries is unfaithful to her. And whoever marries someone who's divorced is unfaithful to. Which of you, if you had 100 sheep and lost one of them, wouldn't leave the 99 in the hills and go after the one that got lost? Divorce, marriage, court, law is all Libra. The sheep are Aries. These are opposing signs. And that's the gospel of Q. That's basically the best way to decode it. Now, here's the books decoded so far. We've done now everything on the top. We've got to do the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Code of Hammurabi, the Quran, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I'm going to go in order. So once again, guys, I appreciate you watching this. Thank you. I hope you learned something new.